Janaballabha Giridvaridhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Om Shabam Sabbataraj Gita Stodes at the Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Shabam Sabbataraj Gita Stodes at the Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Sasi Thakur Prabhupada Ki Gora Premanandi. We'll read from Sri Caitanya Caritamrita. Jai Jai Sri Caitanya Jai Nityananda.
Jai Jai Sri Caitanya Jai Nityananda.
Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Sri Caitanya Jai Nityananda.
Jai Jai Sri Caitanya Jai Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Shri Caitanya Jai Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. We're reading from Adi-lila, chapter 4, text 165. This is a key verse for setting the standard about Lord Chaitanya's internal or hidden reasons for appearance. But this verse permeates all of our bhakti activities and gives us insight even into what our predicament is in the material world, what our affliction is, what's the challenge we face. So this verse simultaneously presents the gold standard of which Lord Chaitanya came to investigate, to experience, and to propagate. And this verse also gives us insight into our conditioned nature. Admendriya priti vancha tare balikam. Krishnendriya priti icha dore premanam. Admendriya priti vancha tare balikam. Krishnendriya priti icha dore premanam. Admendriya priti vancha tare balikam. Krishnendriya priti icha dore premanam. Admendriya priti vancha tare balikam. Krishnendriya priti icha dore premanam. Atma Indriya Priti, for the pleasure of one's own senses. Vancha, desires. Tare, to that. Bali, I say. Kama, lust. Krishna Indriya Priti, for the pleasure of Lord Krishna's senses. Ichcha, desire. Dhare, holds. Prema, love. Nama, the name. Translation. The desire to gratify one's own senses is kama, lust. But the desire to please the senses of Lord Krishna is prema, love. Purport. The revealed scriptures describe pure love as follows: Sarvata dvamsa rahitam, satyapi dvamsa karane, yadbhava bandhanam yuno, saprema parikirtitaha. If there is ample reason for the dissolution of a conjugal relationship, and yet such a dissolution does not take place, such a relationship of intimate love is called pure. The predominated gopis were bound to Krishna in such pure love. For them, there was no question of sexual love based on sense gratification. Their only engagement in life was to see Krishna happy in all respects, regardless of their own personal interests. They dedicated their souls only for the satisfaction of the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. There was not the slightest tinge of sexual love between the gopis and Krishna. the author of Sri Caitanya Caritamrita asserts with authority that sexual love is a matter of personal sense enjoyment. All the regular principles in the Vedas pertaining to desires for popularity, fatherhood, wealth, and so on are different phases of sense gratification. Acts of sense gratification may be performed under the cover of public welfare, nationalism, religion, altruism, ethical codes, biblical codes, health directives, fruit of action, bashfulness, tolerance, personal comfort, liberation from material bondage, progress, family affection, or fear of social ostracism or legal punishment. But all these categories are different subdivisions of one substance, sense gratification. All such good acts are performed basically for one's own sense gratification, for no one can sacrifice his personal interest while discharging these much advertised moral and religious principles. But above all this is a transcendental stage in which one feels himself to be only an eternal servitor of Krishna, the absolute personality of Godhead. All acts performed in this sense of servitude are called pure love of God, because they are performed for the absolute sense gratification of Sri Krishna. However, any act performed for the purpose of enjoying its fruits or results is an act of sense gratification. Such actions are visible, sometimes in gross and sometimes in subtle forms. All right, that was the end of the purport. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. We'll read the translation again. The desire to gratify one's own senses is kama, lust. But the desire to please the senses of Lord Krishna is prema, love. So this is a verse that concerns all levels of existence, from the bottom to the top. And indeed, the crux of existence, whether material or spiritual, is relationship. Everyone, whether free from the material energy or absorbed in the material energy, is concerned with relationships. How am I going to relate? How are others going to relate to me? What is the quality of the relationship? So this verse gives deepest clarity. It's pointing out that even the most refined principles of material existence have a selfish motivation. Family affection, legal punishment or fear of legal punishment, biblical codes, nationalism, public welfare. There's always an element in those activities of what's in it for me. Even in the family affection type that is so exalted in this world, the mother's love for the child, there's always some desire to get something in return. Though so subtle. Nationalism, public welfare, environmentalism, this ism, that ism, there's always a kickback, no matter how small. So you may say, well, isn't this nitpicking? I mean, come on, give people a break, you know. They're trying to do good. do good to themselves, do good to others, and here, this super high bhakti standard, which is probably meant for another time. It's not meant for here and now. It's like, it's good to hear about. It's kind of poetic, isn't it? Mendriya priti vancha tare balikam. It rhymes. Krishnendriya prite itcha dore premanam. Oh, how nice, how artistic. But meanwhile, as we deal with day-to-day reality, what's in it for me? And sooner or later, in every relationship in the material sphere, comes the question, the popular question, what have you done for me lately? And that extends into religion and theology. As we explained yesterday, simply appreciating that God is great, He is almighty, He is all-powerful, is a good beginning, but often that appreciation immediately leads to treating God as your order supplier. Since you are so great, I've got my shopping list that you should fulfill. And then you can take that, you can ride out on that tangent all the way to prosperity religion, which is very popular in many parts of the world. If you're a true believer, you should demonstrate that. God's blessings are demonstrated in you by your health and your wealth. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be ashamed of wealth. It's God's blessings upon you. If you're truly devoted, these things come. Bhakti takes a unique standard. And not that the bhakti standard is impractical. It's setting the bar so that we can work our way towards it. Without any idea of what the standard is, how can we ever satisfy the soul? The soul can only be satisfied by pure devotional service. So at least we should know that and gradually work our way toward that standard. And of course, the amazing thing is that although we say the bhakti standard of pure love is so far beyond us, it's like a dream world, nevertheless, in our own personal relationships, what do we want? Pure love. And what's troubling us? We're troubled by the fact that our attempts to love and be loved are mixed with such distress and misunderstanding and temporariness and anxiety. Everyone wonders about these things. Yet, we want to deny the reality of pure love in the supreme absolute truth. The thing that in our conditioned life we cling to so desperately. We long for pure reciprocation. I very briefly, hear it all the time from couples. He's not doing this. I wish he would do that. If she would only. It just goes on and on. What's underneath it all is we're looking for that pure exchange of selflessness. Reminds me of when I was a 9-year-old, 10-year-old kid. I always used to wonder about a very popular song. It was number one back then. Will you still love me tomorrow? Tonight you're mine completely. You give your love so sweetly. The light of love shines brightly in your eyes, but will you still love me tomorrow? With so many words spoken, you say that I'm the only one. But will my heart be broken when the night meets the morning sun? I used to wonder about that as a little kid, like, what's going on here? So there's this paranoia about are feeling genuine, loving reciprocation. So the bhakti texts take this head on. This is what you want, and here is how to get it. It's going to take some purification. What you want is in relationship to Krishna. Now, often the question comes up, well, if we just focus on Krishna, what about everyone else? What does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? When he asks, Tadvidi pranipatena pariprasnena seva, if you want to know the supreme absolute truth, you approach my representative. And the next verse he says, the result of that, yajgatva na punamoham, you won't be in illusion anymore. And what's the symptom that you won't be in illusion anymore? You'll see all living entities are in me and they're mine. So someone who is properly Krishna conscious knows how to deal with all living entities. The two go together. Why is Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami bringing up this point about what is love and what is lust? The desire to gratify one's own senses is kama, lust, but the desire to please the senses of Lord Krishna is prem, love. I like how Srila Prabhupada mentions in the Krishna book that it's something that gives us solace. He says, there is sense gratification in all spheres of life. That makes us relax, doesn't it? Sense gratification goes on whether in the material world or the spiritual world. It will always be there. But the question is, who is the gratification for? The spiritual world means all the gratifications for Krishna's senses. And the material world means the gratification is for my senses, or bodies that are near and dear to me, or people or neighborhoods or nations that are near and dear to me. Let them prosper. So this issue of who is the enjoyer of the senses is crucial to our daily existence, whether we're beginning devotees or the most advanced. Now this comes up because of Kaviraj Goswami's explaining the confidential reason why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears. We discussed yesterday about the visible reasons, and we reminded you that the visible reasons don't mean they're inferior. Just like Krishna has visible and hidden reasons for his appearance, it's the same with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Krishna's visible reasons are vinashaya chudaskritam, to annihilate the miscreants. His confidential reasons are he wants to display his all-attractive Adi-lila, to capture the minds of the conditioned souls. Similarly, Mahaprabhu has his visible reasons for appearance, spreading the Yuga Dharma and teaching Braja Bhakti. But then there's an internal, hidden reason in which Krishna wants to experience the purest love, the love of his purest devotees. And he can't do that as Krishna. Krishna's wondering, what is this love that my dearest devotees have for me? What's it like to be a lover of me? And that's number one. Number two, what do my lovers taste in me? How sweet am I? What is the sweetness of my qualities they're tasting? And number three, what is the happiness that they experience in loving me? All this is beyond me as Krishna. I can't enter into this. In fact, Chaitanya Caritamrita says Krishna felt sorrowful. The Supreme Personality of Godhead feels sorrowful, but don't take it in a mundane way. This is all perfection, because everything about Krishna is perfect and complete. But if he's perfect and complete, Om Purnam, how does he feel this lack? Well, he solves the puzzle by coming as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna taking the position and attitude and emotions of his dearest devotee, Srimati Radharani. Because Krishna can't understand it as Krishna. An example often given is whatever sweet you like, sugar, chocolate. We won't get into comments either way. But can chocolate appreciate its own sweetness and attractiveness? No. Similarly, can Krishna relish his own sweetness as Krishna? How can Krishna know what it's like to love him, to be madly in love with him? I remember there was one famous Hollywood actor. Maybe it was Christopher Reeves or something. Was he famous? We'll find out who are the film addicts here. So, at the time, before he became paralyzed by falling off, doing some kind of stunt in a movie. But anyway, he was known to be a real handsome guy, I guess. And so he just told the media, you know, when I think about myself, I realize I would date myself. Have any of you ever said anything like that? Look in the mirror and say, I would date myself. Well, Krishna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, when he sees a reflection of himself on a stone pillar, he becomes attracted. Who is this? There is the real standard for being the enjoyer. You don't feel that when you look in the mirror at yourself. Oh. But Krishna naturally feels that. So he's wondering, what's it like to be attracted to me? And therefore, he takes the role of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He appears as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who, as we explained the other day, is not an avatar. Actually, he's the original personality of Godhead. And we explain how, when we say the statement, when Krishna desired this, he appeared as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu desired that, he appeared as Krishna. But there's no time involved. Just like when you're talking about Radha Krishna. The one supreme absolute truth has become two eternally. The one supreme absolute truth has separated into two. And then the two have combined as one. Radha and Krishna have combined as one. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When? As soon as we use the question when, we're dealing with time. But this has nothing to do with material time. So therefore, the Shastra says, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Nahe Anya. Lord Chaitanya is Radha Krishna combined. Krishna takes on so much the emotions of Srimati Radharani that he becomes golden in effulgence. So therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has the effulgence, and in his heart are the emotions of Srimati Radharani. Because Krishna wants to taste what is pure love of himself. He's attracted by that pure love of his dearest devotees, of whom Srimati Radharani is the chief. Krishna's attracted to this Rudha Bhava, spotless love. He's thinking, as Chaitanya Caritamrita reveals, they experience happiness, my lovers, in loving me. And I experience happiness in receiving their love. But I suspect, in fact, I know that my devotees enjoy more. They enjoy the relationship more than I can. according to mundane commentators on rasa. Because it's a technical point, but when you read Nectar Devotion and Rupa Goswami's presentation of the Bhakti Rasa system, a lot of it is the terminology, so we can get a grip on it, is from the dramaturgy, dramatic science of rasa as propounded by Bharat Muni. So he says, Bharat Muni says that in a loving relationship, the normal thing is that both partners enjoy equally. But Krishna, in his relationship, says, this is not happening. I perceive that my devotees are enjoying more. So then, does that mean Krishna is no longer the supreme enjoyer? No. He keeps his title intact by coming as a devotee. My devotees enjoy more. I'm the supreme enjoyer. I'll come as a devotee. So that is the mystery of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And why does Krishna suspect, even he knows, that his devotees enjoy more? Because of the spotless love, not even a trace of any kind of selfishness. You see persons trying to experience that selfless love even in material existence. People sacrifice themselves for their family. There's nothing I wouldn't do for my children. They sacrifice themselves for the nation. I remember one Indian nationalist proclaiming to the people, the love of the nation flows in my veins, thicker than my blood. So people have that intuitive desire to sacrifice their self-interest for someone or something. Doctors are not just in it for the money. They also, many of them feel we want to help. Frontline workers, health workers during the pandemic crisis, they expressed, we can't tolerate seeing people suffer in this way. We've got to do our share, even though it's dangerous for us. We've got to go on. That tendency for sacrifice is there, to sacrifice your self-interest. The problem, however, is that, as Srila Prabhupada points out so boldly, when you sacrifice materially for someone, that person is never fully satisfied, and neither are you. Because you're going through the medium of the material energy, and there's always selfish motivation. You want something for yourself in return. So this causes anxiety, that even when I give of myself, it's not reciprocated purely, it's not understood. I could even be rejected, and so you become angry. I remember I was speaking in Mumbai some years ago, and the devotees asked me to make a topic for the event, because they were going to invite hundreds upon hundreds of people. So it was an event for newcomers, especially those they call the youth in India. When someone calls you a youth in India, that means you're 25 or 30 years old. So, so it was a youth preaching event. That means the youngest person was like 20 and ranged on up to 35. So they asked me for a title. So I said, all right, it's a new audience. You don't want the straight Shastra approach right off the bat. You want something that brings the people in, and we can expound on that topic in a Krishna conscious way. I said, all right, the topic is frustrated love. So the Indian devotees looked at me like, well, Maharaj, what is that? Okay, I mean, we respect you. You've got experience. I mean, if you think this is going to bring them in and interest them, okay. So they put the word out just to their congregation. Thursday night, 7 o'clock. Big discussion on frustrated love. So then they sat back to watch what the reaction was. They expected, probably 20 persons will show up, 30 persons will show up. The night of the program came, The whole temple was chock-a-block, full of 500 people, eager to hear about frustrated love. And not only that, the media came with TV cameras, journalists. They were coming up to me with their cameras, like, is this the latest import from the West? Frustrated love? We got to get into this, We Indians aren't going to be left behind, This could be some good stuff. Frustrated love. So it's a reality whether you recognize it or not. And this frustration leads to anger. But everyone wants to give of themselves. Mothers look forward to having children so they can pour their heart. They've also told me, I don't know, but they have told me that when the child is little, the child's helpless. So it just has to take it all from you as you pour your heart into the child, because the child can't get away. Everyone has some kind of motivation to give of yourself to the military, like in the USA, during their so-called Revolutionary War, in which they threw off the rule of the British Crown. They make a big deal out of it when they teach it in school. The American Revolution. Actually, the truth is, they simply didn't want to pay their taxes. So they make a big thing about it. It's a political democratic revolution. No, they didn't want to pay the tea tax. So, during the fight with Britain for independence, for the colonies to have independence, there was one spy for the colonies who was captured. Every American kid is taught this, like when you're 8 or 9 years old, you have to know this guy's name. A great hero. He was spying against the British, and the British caught him, and they're about to hang him. So they asked, do you have any last words to say before you're hung? You were spying against the queen or the king, whatever. You've been spying on behalf of these rebellious colonies. What do you have to say before? That's it. He's on the, what do you call it? The gallows. The rope is on his neck, and they're about to tighten it. What are your last words? He said, and every school kid has to learn this, I only regret that I have but one life to give for my country. Finished. So people appreciate that. You don't want to be in his shoes, but you appreciate this selflessness. Yeah, you wouldn't sacrifice yourself for that particular cause, but there are always other causes you'll give yourself to. So Kaviraj Goswami is pointing out, you do this in the material sphere, the perfection of doing it is in the spiritual sphere, and the ultra-perfection of it is in the loving exchanges between Krishna's most confidential devotees and Krishna. And this is why Krishna wants to be a devotee. Their love is unfathomable, and they enjoy more than me because their love is so pure. I want to be a devotee, but I can't be a devotee as Krishna, the supreme enjoyer. All right, I'll come as Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna taking on the position and the emotions and the effulgence of Srimati Radharani. Briefly, very briefly, for older devotees, it's there in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Prabhupada mentions that not only does Lord Chaitanya appear in the position of Srimati Radharani, but he also takes the role of a servant of Srimati Radharani. So, all this is going on because of the desire to taste pure love, to understand what it is. So my point to you is that this is important in our ordinary life, and this is important for our spiritual advancement. It's not something that we can deal with overnight, but it is the goal of bhakti. We're not simply about convincing ourselves we're different from the body and mind. Those are the ABCs. But the goal of the bhakti process is pure love. Because, as Bhagavatam says, Sabai Pumsam Paro Dharmo Yato Bhaktir Tokshade Ahoitukiya Pratiyata Yanatma Supersediti. Yanatma, the Atma, will only be satisfied by this pure love, which is uninterrupted and has no material motivation. That's the real standard of spirituality, as they say these days. The gold standard is pure devotional service with no material motivation. And because there's no material motivation, there'll be no interruption. Interruptions come when there's material motivation. You can see that even in your daily life, in your relationships with others. Sometimes you just want to take a break from the person. Could your own spouse, I just got to get away, I'm going to go for a walk, visit mother or something. Because you're not feeling fully satisfied at that moment. So you take a break, you interrupt. You'll come back, hopefully, but you take a break. Because you feel that I need to do something else, some variety. You're not satisfying me fully. Of course, you never say that, but you're not satisfying me fully at this moment, so I'll just do something else that could be satisfying. Then I come back, and juggling, as we described the other day. So the interruption is because of material motivation. But in pure bhakti, there's no question of interruption. And therefore, Krishna becomes happy by seeing his confidential devotees, and they become happier by seeing Krishna's reaction to their beauty, and then Krishna becomes happier by seeing that they're becoming happier and more beautiful, and then they become happier and more beautiful by seeing Krishna is pleased. This goes on eternally. So what kind of love is that? It doesn't exist in the material world. But we can see through our material affairs or our bhakti relationships within the material world, which have varying degrees of purity, we can see what the real standard is. And everything falls into place. My loving propensity, my needs, my wants, my frustrations, my anger, all this fits into the picture. And something clicks on us. Yes, let me find out the best way to fulfill my loving propensities. Let me find out how to purify them. Because Yanatma Supersediti, the spirit soul will only be satisfied with pure devotional service. And this pure devotional service is such that Krishna himself wants to experience it. Not, as we said the other day, devotional service crippled by awe and reverence, although that's a necessary beginning, and we shouldn't artificially jump over that. But Krishna wants more. Just like we pointed out, you don't want a relationship, whether it's marital or parental or whatever, where there's always stiff formality. Good morning. What would you like today? Everyone wants more than that. You want to feel some spontaneity, some kindling of emotions that aren't straitjacketed by awe and reverence. You can just imagine, you wake up in the morning and your spouse says to you, good morning, Mrs. So-and-so, your royal majesty. So what is this? Everyone wants to feel love without hindrance to such an extent that you're willing to become subordinate to that love, to that lover. I was in the Melbourne airport and waiting for a flight. I was seated at the gate, and there were several gates all at one end of the corridor. And so there were about 300 persons seated at 4 gates waiting for their planes. And so seated in front of me was like this well-to-do, obviously well-to-do business executive, 35 years old, neatly attired, casual wear, but you could definitely see businessman, corporate type. And his wife was there, very nicely dressed. And they had their kid there. The kid was like 4 years old. And so the little kid, the 4-year-old girl, would stand in front of her father, point to the ground, and say, "Down, Daddy, down." And the guy would fall out of his seat onto the floor on his back, and then get back up into his chair. And again, the little girl, "Down, Daddy, down." And he would fall off the chair onto the floor. And all 300 people are just watching. The ladies are blushing. The men are kind of trying to hide their emotions, as always. And it's like, this is where it's really at. These are the good old days. This is what we should marry for. It's like TV. Perfect family. So this went on for a half hour. "Down, Daddy, down." He would fall out of the chair. There's 300 people watching. But he wanted to feel that he's conquered by his daughter's love. And yet when Krishna does this, we think, oh, this is mythology. Damodar Lila is very sweet, but really, Krishna becomes bound around the waist, not exactly by the rope, but by Mother Yashoda's love, and how sweet, but there's still my desire for my share of material happiness. So Chaitanya Caritamrita is dealing with this love psychology and proper standard head on. And this is the hidden reason why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears. He's Krishna wanting to be a devotee. Therefore, if you disturb Lord Chaitanya by treating him as Krishna, he protests. He doesn't want that. You're ruining his fun. I'll end with one example. Lord Chaitanya and his associates had gathered together in a residence. Chaitanya Caritamrita doesn't say exactly whose home it was or where they were. It's not important. But he came into the room where all his associates were chanting his glories in the same way they would chant the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They were speaking about him as if he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Lord Chaitanya immediately chastised them. What is this? How have you become so rebellious, so impudent? Why don't you do things in an authorized way? Why are you glorifying me in that way? Have you lost your shastric knowledge? I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead? This is all implicit. I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead? You're talking like that? Don't you stick to the Shastra? So while he was chastising them, thousands of people had gathered outside the house. And they were roaring out, "Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Jai Brajendra Kumar," glorifying Lord Chaitanya as the son of Maharaj Nanda. So Lord Chaitanya goes out to meet them. There are thousands of people there. He raises his hands in the air and he cries out, "Hari, Hari," and the people thunder that back. The whole sound fills the universe. Their sinful activities flee. They're injected with love of Krishna. All this is going on. So then Lord Chaitanya steps back inside, and Srivas Thakur is looking at him like, You hide yourself at home, but outside they can say whatever they want. He said, it's like the sun after it's rising then tries to cover itself by clouds. So Lord Chaitanya felt very embarrassed. Srivas, will you please stop these jokes? So why is this that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't want to be called Krishna? Because you're spoiling his mission, which is to taste the position of Srimati Radharani, to taste that spotless love, Rudha Bhava, not as Krishna, but as the devotee of Krishna. So therefore we respect that desire of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So these are essential points in our bhakti development. Because we're love hungry, we're suffering from frustrated love, we need to know what we are progressing to. Yes, we are not the body, but then we need to know the Caritamrita, the eternal nectarian characteristics of the spirit, soul, and immortality. So this is a very key verse, and although it's buried deep in the Adi-lila, it is a pivotal verse for understanding why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. What is the hidden mission, which goes on simultaneously with the visible or so-called external mission. All right, we'll stop there. Any questions or comments from the senior Vaishnavas? Hare Krishna, Hare.
Maharaj, I'm just wondering, Srimad Bhagavatam is the topmost devotee that can be. So through Caitanya Mahaprabhu experiencing that love of that cover all bases, in other words, would you want to experience the mood of other devotees like cowherd boys and nothing so? That's also another unique love and experience that he doesn't experience.
Sometimes he would take, because then again, you see, it's a double reality. He's Krishna, and Krishna is Rasovaisa, the ocean of all rasas. So yes, you'll read, especially in Chaitanya Bhagavat, that sometimes Lord Chaitanya would taste Vatsalya Prem, Sakya Ras, and so on and so forth, sometimes. But his main mission is Sringar. But it becomes confusing sometimes because he's a double reality. Sometimes his Krishna comes out. In Navadvip, he would show the Krishna side sometimes to his devotees in his early Leela, and then would say, "Don't tell anyone." Like to the astrologer, to the Brahmana who was trying to offer his food, and little Nimai kept interrupting the offering. So Mahaprabhu would show, as Nimai Pandit, actually, this is who I really am, but don't tell anyone. But as he went deeper into his later pastimes, after he left Navadvip, and especially when he went to Puri, you see that less and less. In fact, it's hard to find examples of Lord Chaitanya revealing himself as Krishna. He went deeper into being having the position of Srimati Radharani.
He expanded as the cowboys and cars of Uberman stole those with his experience being at all the various cowboys.
He would act like a cowherd boy sometimes. But that wasn't his specialty. That wasn't his focus. It would happen. He's Krishna. He contains all loving relationships. He even demonstrated Shantaras by his appreciation of Vrindavan Dham. But his specialty is Sringaras. And that's the real reason why he came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
So he's experiencing in different ways all the different rasas in different leelas, and we see it in this world that when he comes to manifest. So in that way, he's like Rasaraj. He accepts the rasa, and he also experiences the rasa by manifesting himself in these leelas.
Jai. Vaishnavis, any questions? Yes.
Srila Prabhupada explains many times our relationship with Krishna like that sense is giving the food to the mouth, like the hands that go to the stomach. Somebody could say, oh, this also sense gratification on this. Stomach gives you energy. It is also
You missed, I think, the first class I gave, in which I gave the example of in Adi-lila, the cowherd boys say they're hungry, but actually they're thinking, we've been playing so long, Krishna needs to eat, but he won't eat unless we say we're hungry. So therefore we say we are hungry, but actually they're simply 100% thinking of Krishna. And I explained that the gopis say that they're desiring Krishna. Where are you, Krishna? But they're thinking in a pure selfless way, how can Krishna be happy without us? We need to be present with him for his sake. It's a little hard to understand, because in the material existence, romantic love is so surcharged with selfishness. I want. I really want you. Why aren't you cooperating? Be nice, please. As I say down at the Krishna village, I don't even mind if you pretend to love me. So love-starved. Pretend it, I don't mind. So in Vrindavan, everything is 100% Krishna's pleasure. That's all they're thinking. Even when they seem to be saying, Krishna, save us, deliver us. All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.